Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Robert George. I'm the Director of Employer Information Systems here at the MTRS. And this morning we're going to cover retiree insurance plan rate changes in MyTRS. I'm joined today both by our Director of Communications, Scott O, and Mildred Rodriguez, our retiree insurance coordinator. Don't worry, the boss is here to make sure I don't say anything wrong. And we're going to cover today the process of doing global rate changes in MyTRS. So basically changing the prices on the plans themselves. But before we get started, just on behalf of the MTRS board and our executive director, thank you for joining us. And let's get started. So for today's agenda, we're going to go through a couple of different sort of aspects of this. And the first, we're going to start with some reminders, what plan rates are, talk about stop dates and some other stuff that people have run into issues with. We're going to explain the overnight batch a little bit, just make sure people understand that part of the process. And then hopefully we can go through some of the things that people have run into in doing this process to sort of just help everybody learn from others' mistakes and make sure you have an opportunity to hopefully avoid some of that. So for those of you, who are joining us live, again, thank you for joining us. And of course, some of you will be watching this as we're going to record it and put it up on our site for folks to visit later. So anybody who's watching it now, if you feel like you missed something, you should be able to access it sometime in the next week. And then of course, we'll have it up on our site for folks to review at their best convenience. So let's get started. Now, before we get into global changes, I just wanted to kind of talk about some sort of table setters, if you will, right? So before we get into rates, just a few reminders. First, sometimes folks kind of get in their own head about the benefit month versus the coverage effective date. So the coverage effective date is about when the insurance coverage is effective, right? So it's going to be what the coverage is for. And we always take it a month early so that you have the funds by the time you have to pay the premium for your employees or shortly thereafter. So whenever you're entering anything in MyTRS, anytime we're talking about dates in MyTRS, we're always going to be focused just on the coverage effective date and when that coverage is in place. So new coverage generally starts July 1st. We're always going to talk about July 1st rates. Yes, it does come out in June, and yes, you do get it, hopefully by the end of June, if not the first couple days in July. But again, everything is always focused on just when the coverage is. Sometimes folks get in their own head and they're like, oh, the change is going to happen in June, and then they pick June dates and they screw themselves up. So again, focusing on coverage effective. Now, always enter your coverage based on the effective date, right? So we're always, again, focused on that same process. Try to avoid thinking of both because that's where people tend to get themselves into trouble. Now, we have a monthly deadline for changes that need to be made for that benefit month, which would be the next month's coverage effective. And now you can always put in changes after the fact if you need to retroactively, that's okay. But we're going to put that deadline up every single month. We try to get it up by the 1st, on or before the 1st. So we'll probably have it up later today for the month of May. We do block out access to the system for a couple of days currently. We do that to give us an opportunity to reach out to employers if we have to fix some stuff. Unfortunately, we have had situations in the past where somebody goes in and they make some sort of an error or something, and we might have to do some group fixes for you. Okay, so this is really just about protecting the retirees. But we'll set that blackout date and what that deadline is every single month, and we put it up on the homepage of MyTRS for you. Now, if you're accessing this from online, of course, there are other guides and videos online. But if you're with us live, I want to just remind you that we have guides and videos designed to both walk you through overall topic areas as well as very specific processes. And we're going to talk about those at the end of the presentation today. We'll point you to just give you a little bit more information on it, but I just want to make sure that you are aware of that. We also have a written guide. So some folks would prefer not to see the video version. They'd rather have written instructions in front of them. So we have both an online version of that, and we will mail you a book if you would like one. We're going to show you how to reach out for that a little bit later. And then a couple of other things that we just want to make sure people are clear about. And that is, first, future changes can always be entered early. So somebody comes in, it's open enrollment, and they're like, hey, I'm going to switch my coverage, effective July 1st. And it's now, they're an early bird, right? They showed up on time. They're here on April 10th, and they're telling you that. You can enter that change now, even though there's going to be a couple benefits in which you're paying the or they're still having their old plan taken, or anything like that. If you know someone's turning 65 in May, you could have entered that back in March if they had told you what plan they wanted. The one caveat to that I would say is if you have any changes for July 1st, you probably just want to get your global changes in first, your plan prices in first, and then do all the individual stuff. That way the right plan price is in there when you're making your change. And then last but not least, please do not underestimate the impact of your insurance changes on a retiree's usable income. Okay, so every change you're making now really needs to be thought out well, because it's going to affect your retirees almost in real time. So if you were making changes today, that's going to affect your retirees' May benefit, right? So if you backdate something, or if you're not careful enough looking at the instructions, you're hurting real people in real time. And we're going to do everything we can to help protect against that, including blacking you out for a couple of days to look for problems. But please be mindful of that, okay? And if you're not sure what to do, don't do it. Reach out to us. We'll happily walk you through and give you instructions. Again, we'll give you the book, point you to videos if that's helpful, whatever we can do to help you. But, please keep in mind that these changes have real effects on people's, real income. And obviously those folks worked very hard for their income. So, all right. So with that, let's talk about some global changes. So first, real basic, what are plan rates? Well, MyTRS allows us to maintain a whole group of plans. We maintain them on a statewide basis so that employers and the MTRS staff can manage the deductions for retirees on a large scale. We have 72,000 retirees that are on payroll. Some large number of them, maybe 60, 65,000, have insurance deductions taken. And so nobody wants there to be a process where every single one has to be manually changed individually every year, right? So we've got some global capability that's in the system, and one of those is to maintain prices on a plan level, all right? So the MyTRS process is going to allow you to manage what plans you have, designate particular plans to specific, it allows us to designate plans to specific employers, manage all plan options on the employer level, manage the plan prices on the employer level, and manage individual retiree options. So once you have a plan, you can attach people to those individual, or attach that plan to your individual retirees. Now, please keep in mind though, again, we're doing this statewide. So if we have code BC, which is Blue Cross Basic, that label and that plan is maintained across the Commonwealth. So occasionally we'll get a question and somebody will say, hey, can you just change my label a little bit? Well, no. I mean, if it was a typo or something, sure. But if we change it in one place, it changes to all the employers who have that plan. So we can always give you a different plan, or hopefully one that matches your labels a little bit better. But again, we manage those statewide. We do try to keep them, or be moving to make them a little bit more generic so that it's just a little easier to maintain them across the state. Please keep in mind that whatever the plan label is, it does not appear to your retiree. They just see a medical deduction and they get a code for it, but they won't see the specific, Blue Cross, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, HMO, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the plan rates are the price on the employer level. So basically, if you have your Blue Cross plan that I mentioned before, say your Harvard Pilgrim plan, and then you have an individual price, you have a family price, and those you can maintain on the employer level, and everyone enrolled in that plan, whenever you make changes to it, will have that new plan price distributed to them. So if you have 1,000 people on the plan and they're all active and they're all set up correctly, if you make the change to the price in one place, MyTRS overnight will distribute that, okay? So as I mentioned in the last bullet here, adding a plan period with a new price is going to enable MyTRS to go ahead, and it will locate every retiree on that plan who does not have a stop date. We're going to talk about stop dates soon. And it's going to say, okay, since they're on the plan and they don't have a stop date, they need this new price. So we're going to walk through how you add those, what it looks like, and all that sort of thing. But again, we're talking about the basics in the beginning. So just to give you an idea, a screenshot from our Aviary Public Schools, our fake school district here. And this is just what insurance rates look like. So as you can see, you have your coverage type, which is medical, dental, second medical, et cetera. The insurance carrier, Blue Cross Blue Shield, MedX, Aetna, Tufts. Which different plans, you can see we have a bunch of different plans showing. The coverage type, like family versus individual. The start dates, a stop date if they have one, if it's a plan that's already closed, or it's, you're looking at last year's price, and then of course the premium, which is the price itself. Now, all that's basic. Okay, we store them, we maintain them on a state level. So now we want to talk about some things about the plan rates themselves, right? So first, I want to open up with, if you have a new carrier, if you have a new coverage type, or a brand new plan, right? So you're like, well, you know what, we use Harvard Pilgrim, but now we're going to use this other new product from Harvard Pilgrim, so we need a new plan added. That has to be done by the MTRS. So you want to send us the information you need, when it's going to be effective, which options you need, and we can add that to you, to your employer as an option. Now, if your employer had previously used it and stopped using it, now is going back to it, it may be available in your plan rates as an older rate, because again, we keep those long term on you. But if it's something brand new, you've never had Tufts before, and now you're moving to Tufts, we can add those plans for you. You just have to let us know. Okay, so that's for as far as adding a brand new carrier, something that's just not an option already. Everything else you can do. So if you're adding new plan rate periods, sometimes we'll refer to them as plan rows, because as you probably saw from the example before, each one has its own row. It's basically the same fundamental concept as when you're adding new coverage to an existing retiree or even a brand new retiree. If you think about it, each new plan price, I know we have this highlighted in bright green here, but each new price requires a new row. I know I'm saying this very boldly and slowly, but I want to make sure folks are very aware of that. You should never be overwriting a price for last year. There'll be consequences. We'll talk about that. So each new price needs a new row. If the price is not changing, you do not need to add a new row for this year. Just leave it alone. If it's still open and there's no stop date on it, it's going to continue taking it until you tell it otherwise. So there's no need to do the extra work. We've been noticing folks have been adding rows, even though there's no price change. There's no need for that. Now, when you're adding the row, there's going to be an options wizard. So basically, you go through and you pick the different options. We'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. They are the rates, not only the current rates, but the historic rates store on the employer level. I know we showed you that a few minutes ago and how plan rates look, and we'll show you again in just a moment. But it's important that we keep them there. No spring cleaning. Do not go in and delete old stuff, because if you delete something out of MyTRS, you're telling it that it should never have been there. So if you delete your 2023 rates, you're going to refund every deduction associated to that plan, which means you will be creating tons of extra work, both for you and for us, to make sure that we don't refund a bunch of money to retirees that we shouldn't. And then last but not least, when you're going to see that the overall structure looks just like it does on retirees. So if you're comfortable with retirees, if you really think about that process, it really translates well to how we store the group plans. Okay, so the first example we're going to show you, and this is an individual, obviously a fake person, Barbara Blackbird from Aviary Public Schools, and you can see Barbara's coverage from it looks like 2014 all the way up to 2023, and for every row, every time there's a new price, she gets her own row with a start date and a new price. Okay, and that same exact concept applies to global plans, right? So Blue Cross Blue Shield, every time there's a new price, you can see that we're adding in a different row with that unique cost, start date, stop date, same exact concept. So before we get too deep into this, I want to kind of make a big deal about stop dates. So when you're adding coverage to MyTRS, stop dates tend to be the one thing in all of the process that gets folks into trouble. And so, we have a new slogan we're trying to get off the ground here, which is stop with the stop dates. All right. So before we show you how to add the plans, we really want to talk about these a little bit. And the reason for it is folks are kind of going out of order. They're winging it. Maybe they're not reading the directions. I'm not sure. Or they think to themselves like, oh, I'm going to do this in batch. So I'm just going to put in all my stop dates and then I'll add all my new rows. Well, that's a crucial error. And you're going to know that by the end of this presentation exactly why. But when you're going to add plan rows, MyTRS will add the stop date for you. And it's crucial that MyTRS see that the retirees on that plan do not have a stop date. And the reason for that is if the system goes in and it looks at a retiree and it sees they have a stop date, it's presuming you've told MyTRS that person is no longer accepting coverage, right? That way we don't confuse people who have decided to terminate their coverage with people who need a new rate. And so if they have a stop date in their row, they will not get the new price. So when you're adding a plan, if the stop date doesn't appear in the corresponding row for the previous, period, so let's say you're adding a July 1, 2025 rate, and you look down and you see that the July 1, 2024 rate does not have a stop date, that should tell you that you made a mistake in adding it in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you picked individual versus senior, or perhaps you're confusing first medical with second medical or something along those lines. You should never have to add the stop date. So if you've added a row and you look down, you're like, oh, that's strange, the stop date's not there. If you're not sure what to do, I would hit cancel. We'll happily go through it with you. But what we've had in some cases is folks overlook the fact that they're adding a brand new medical coverage, but then they stop their second medical. And again, that will stop the rate from distributing when they add the second medical later. Or it misleads them to think that they've already updated second medical and they just don't put in a new price. And everybody who has second medical deductions in that same plan, they don't get the new price starting the next year. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that can go wrong. When adding your new price rates, do not add a stop row to your newly added rows. So you're thinking to yourself, you know what, this is going to be the 25-26 rate. I'm going to add my new row with a July 1st, 2025, and I'm going to add a June 30th, 2026 stop date to it, and it looks nice and neat. But remember, what you're telling the system is that at the end of 2026, this retiree is no longer going to have insurance coverage. So it's kind of like a landmine. When you go in to add your rates next year, you're going to be surprised to find out that no one has retirement deductions taken. And that's because when the batch tries to go in and update the next year, it's going to see a bunch of stop dates. And so it's not going to apply that new price to your retirees next year. So it's kind of like, again, a ticking time bomb waiting to not work the next year. So again, with the stop dates, when you're making global changes, you should not have to enter any of them. Now, if you have, and I've kind of explained the last bullet while I was explaining the first ones. If you have a situation where, okay, well, I think I do need stop dates because I'm going to get rid of a plan and we're replacing it with a new plan. In theory, yes, but I would say a couple of things for that. First, make sure your new plan is in the system and that you have manually moved all your retirees from the old plan to the new plan before you go in and add a stop date, okay? That's going to be crucial because if you do it in the wrong order, no deduction is going to be taken. Second, even after you've moved everybody over, I would leave that old plan open for at least one cycle. And the reason I do that is you're human. And if you're moving lots of retirees over, it is entirely possible that you miss somebody. So if you miss somebody and they have the old price taken, that will be an identifier on your insurance report to say, oh, geez, Phyllis still has the old rate. We must have missed her. However, if you turn off the plan and you missed Phyllis is going to have any deduction, so she's not going to be on your report, which is a better chance of being missed because she's out of sight, out of mind. So again, even if you're going to stop a plan totally because you're no longer going to offer that plan, I would let it go the first month or two. Just make sure everybody's off of that plan before you add the stop dates. So on a global level, there really should be no reason why you're ever entering in stop dates with all of your other rates. So hopefully made that clear. I'm sorry, but we've seen so many mistakes around this. And I feel bad every time I had a district who they added stop dates in with all their new rates back in 2024, and they had to add insurance to every single retiree in their district manually for each retiree, while retirees were calling up to complain that no deductions were taken. So nobody wants that. Please make sure you go through carefully, and we should be able to avoid that pretty easily. All right. With that, let's go on to how the process will add. But actually, before we do that, do we have any questions in the chat or anything you want me to read out loud? There's two in the chat.
Want to read it out?
I can see it.
Oh, so the first question is, if someone's coverage as a retiree begins on 10/1/2025, should I enter it with a coverage effective date as 9/1/2025, so it pulls the deduction in time for the 10/1/2025 coverage effective date?
No, so this goes back to the first slide. Always think in terms of the coverage date. So if you, and just to make sure everyone heard the question, if you have someone whose coverage begins in October And so therefore the deduction theoretically, if on time, comes out in September. What date do you use? So you always want to use that October 1st start date. Always base it on the coverage. Don't worry about the deduction, especially if they're a new retiree. Let's say for whatever reason, maybe they applied for retirement at the end of the summer. They thought they were coming back this year, and they just said to themselves, "I can't do another year." We get those every August, right? So you could have a situation where their first deduction doesn't come out until October or November, right? But it will come out retroactive based on the coverage date you put in. So again, you want to go with the October date because that's when the coverage is effective. Any others?
We're changing dental providers. We won't need to change the name, correct?
You are not required. So if you're going from one provider to the other, and depending on the labeling that you use in MyTRS, you are not required to change that labeling. If you find it currently comfortable to use the code you have, we can just put it in as a price change and you should be good to go. If you're offering an additional plan, or if folks find themselves in a situation where they're offering additional plans, and in that case, we would have to add a new dental on top of that, and then you'd have two options instead of just one. Some of the dental plans literally have the label dental. So again, it's really about facilitating your ability to take deductions. And your retirees will just see that it's a dental deduction. Is that all the questions you got? Good, awesome. All right, thanks for the questions, everybody. Hopefully that's helping. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual process of adding in the plans. So you're going to go in, and there's going to be like a two-step process. I'm going to show you some pictures in just a second. Pictures worth 1,000 words. And so first, think of it as you're going to add the new plan in. Then you're going to edit the rate of your new plan so that it has the proper price. It's a two-step process. That's the way the software works. But it's generally pretty easy to go through. One thing I can't say enough is to do a couple rates at a time. You might be thinking to yourself, like, I got 20 rates to do. But if you think about it, it takes you about as long to add them in MyTRS as it would have to add them to a spreadsheet to email us, right? So, and if you still have your spreadsheet, and if it gathers the information in a way that makes it easier for you, feel free to fill out your spreadsheet and use it yourself. But you get to put it in right away. You only have to do this twice a year. So take your time and get it right, because when things go wrong, it's going to be a lot more work and a lot more time that you're going to have to put in. So when you're adding in plans too, do not pick every option. If you only use individual and family, only pick individual and family. If you don't have like a distinct price for survivors, and you have no need to break out who's a survivor versus a retiree, you're just adding in more work for yourself, and you might be cluttering up like the options menu, right? Now, if you want to add everyone in, you can, but you do not have to. You only really want to add the plans that you need. But keep in mind, though, if it's the type of plan that you're going to offer both in medical and second medical, MedX is a great example of this. Everyone who uses MedX needs it in first and second medical. So you're going to maintain those two separately. So that's not redundant. They each have their own category. And so, for instance, when you're doing rate changes, you need to change both. Okay. Occasionally we'll get a call and they'll be like, well, it's weird, tough TMP is, the price is right for some retirees and not for others. And it's because they've fixed it or updated it in first medical, but they forgot second medical. And that's always curable. But keep in mind, if you're offering the plan in both places, you have to maintain it in both places. And so when you're adding them in, I'm going to show you a quick picture here. But basically, when you're adding rates, you're going to click on Add Rates at the top here. It's going to bring you through a little wizard. We did this with still shots. These are literally the still shots that are in the training manual, because we wanted to be consistent here. And you can see, for instance, so in this case, we're adding in a new plan. They have 3 different options here. They have survivor, and then they have senior for both medical and second medical. And because of the way I filtered out, I aimed at all the Aetna plans, right? And so this school district only has a couple of Aetnas. And for the A&P plan, we're adding in medical and second medical. And then we're going to hit done. And of course, you have to put in the start date before you try to get too far. So right up here where the start date is, you put that in, check off the 2 plans you want to add, you click done. And again, only pick the plans you need. I can't say this enough. We get so many folks who reach out to us and they're like, admittedly, it's my first time, I picked everything. Okay. So if you end up picking some plans and you're like, oh, I didn't really need to pick survivor or individual ×2, leave them at a penny. And when you're done adding all your rates and you feel comfortable that you've added everything correctly, just send us an email and say, hey, I've got a couple that I added by accident. They each have a penny. Can you just delete those rows for us? And we can do that. Okay, just be absolutely sure all of your good options have good prices by the time you email us. All right, so once you've gone through that little wizard, and it took me much longer to explain it than it'll take you to do, then you'll come back to your main rate screen and you'll see the rows get added with a penny apiece. That's the default. Okay. So in this case, our user added a couple of Tufts plans and then a couple of the AMP plans. Okay. And one HB plan here. Now, if you then want to click on edit rates. Okay. And when you're in edit rates, quite simply, you want to target the ones that have 0 as the value and put in their new prices. So you'll see as of 1/1/2024, in this case, the person adding the rates would have put in the price. And if you think about the plans that I mentioned were being added, the AMP plans, this is what they look like after you put the price in. So they had to put a price for $89.99 for both medical and second medical. And this is what it looks like after you're done typing, no big deal. And then at the bottom, you hit save, everybody's happy. Quite frankly, that simple. Now, once you put in your new prices, MyTRS is going to do some stuff, but it doesn't do it until overnight, okay? So much like the visual kind of shows in this, when rate changes are entered, right, MyTRS will trigger an overnight batch, and it's going, again, this is about the stop dates, don't forget, it's going to look for every retiree or survivor that has plan coverage that it doesn't, and the person doesn't have a stop date. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to put a flag on them, and then it's going to enter a stop date. So that way the person doesn't have 2 open plans. Then it's going to create a new row for the person, and that new row is going to have their new price. This allows MyTRS to globally update all your people. So you're going to put in, let's say you have MedX, and you're a large district, you have 1,300 people on MedX between first and second medical. So you go in and you change 2 rows by adding in brand new rows for, MedX is usually January 1st. So you add in a couple rows for January 1st with new prices. MyTRS overnight, it's going to do all the heavy lifting for you. It's going to find all 1,300 people. It's going to give them all a new row. It'll put the stop date in the old row for you. It'll give you a brand new row with a 1/1, whatever year it is, and the new price. Okay. Now, if you do it retroactively, so, hey, happens to all of us, right? You forgot to do your changes. It's January. You go, oh, geez, I forgot to put in the new MedX plan. Or if, let's say July and you forgot to put in your new under 65 plans. If you go into MyTRS, you follow the exact same process carefully, put it in for July 1st. And not only on the overnight process, when it creates those rows, it's going to compare the time period. And it's going to go, oh, this is actually retroactive. So if there's a $20 difference in your old price and your new price, MyTRS will do the same process. It'll add the stop dates for you. It'll add a new row with the new price. It'll calculate what the person owes. And then it will create what we call a rebill. So it's rebilling the person for that time period to say, we should have charged you $20 more. We're going to charge you an extra $20 in this one check to make up for it. Okay. Now, if you're putting in retroactive coverage, it happens. It's going to probably happen to everybody at least once, right? But it's your duty to warn your retirees. A, they should know that the change isn't going to happen when they're expecting it, so they don't all shell our call center with questions and confusion. And second, they should know the next month that they're going to have a rate update that's going to charge them extra. And it's only going to happen that once, okay? So the first month, let's say you don't get your stuff in by the cutoff in June for July rates. Okay, that's fine. You put them in, say, July 5th or something when you realize the mistake. So at that point, you should reach out to retirees and just say, hey, folks, heads up, we forgot to put our rates in. You'll see that on your June check, the last year's rate came out. So next month, you're going to get a one-time extra charge. That's just going to make up for the fact that the first deduction already should have been fixed, and then you'll be good to go. A, you'll have it for your record. So if someone calls you, you remember exactly what happened. And B, all your retirees, hopefully, if they know proactively, it's always a lot easier for them to understand. No, retiree insurance, I know I mentioned this before about affecting their current income. But, if you think about being a retiree, right, so if I'm 67, if I get there, and I'm retired, I have my insurance, man, there might not be anything more valuable to me than my health insurance, right? So when the prices fluctuate, when they think their coverage is turned off, it can be really stressful for retirees. So try to think of treating all of these processes with that extra sort of step of care, if you can. So if there's a large rebill portion that gets created in this. So we had a school district, new person took over. They were like, oh man, the person last year, they didn't update the rates. It's March. The prices should have been changed back in July. I'm going to retroactively put in the price changes. I'm not even 100% sure this district knew that it was going to retroactively bill all their retirees. But every one of their retirees was going to get whopped with a couple $100 extra, right? And so I can tell you that if you're going that far back, the MTRS reserves the right. We might just turn that off and switch it for April 1st. Now, we're not looking at, we'll obviously reach out, we'll let you know, but you have to be reasonable. I once had a school district who realized they had a new person take over and they were like, the prices changed 2 years ago. And I was like, well, for the last 2 years, you've gotten reports saying the wrong prices were coming out for all of your retirees. We're going to head and change these in real time. And then you guys can have an internal discussion about your controls, and maybe you should eat the cost in this one particular case because it's been a very long time. You obviously somebody wasn't doing what they were supposed to. So keep in mind, and this also applies to individuals, if that rebill portion is too large, or in some cases, maybe you're not that late, maybe it's only 1 month, but it's such an expensive plan that the retiree's benefit won't support it. Like everything, that's part of why we have the couple days where we block you out. We always reserve the right. If it's not going to be feasible, we might work with you to make different arrangements, okay? We will do our best to help facilitate in situations to be helpful to you and to our retirees, your former employees. But we do reserve the right to change those. So I just like to always make sure I'm clear about that. All right. So after you make your changes, we would like you to take a sample of your retirees and just check them. So you make your changes on Tuesday, that overnight thing's going to happen. On Wednesday morning, it is a good business practice to check a few people, right? So in this case, we have a retiree, her name's Petunia Peafowl, and we looked at Petunia to make sure that our change went in okay. So you can see that Petunia has MedX, and the changes we put in for that school district I was just showing you a few minutes ago included a MedX change, and you can see that her 1/1/2024 rate is available here for second medical. It put in the 1/1/24 value here. It put in the stop date for the old plan. They went from 189 to 197. And I would say just check a couple people for each of your rates. I would try to check somebody that has first and second medical. You can always pull up an old report, your monthly report, to see. And if you don't have one available on your network, you can always pull a fresh copy from MyTRS. It's just always a good practice to double check a few, because if it's before the benefit process is run, if something's wrong, we still have time to fix it, right? And so that little bit of extra due diligence goes a long way, particularly if you have plans that have a lot of people on them. I can't say enough, being proactive is very valuable, all right? Oh, and if you're not sure where to check, I should have mentioned this, I apologize. The next day, if you go under retiree insurance selections, you can see, and you look up a couple of your retirees by name, for instance, you can see all of their options if they have coverage. The other thing is if you put this change in retroactively for Petunia and you want to check to make sure she's getting that $20 bill I mentioned in my previous example, you can go to insurance deduction history the next morning and also see not only did that row go through properly, but it also calculated the proper retroactive bill for her. Now, I had a school district who did most of their rates great, and then they kind of like, maybe they got interrupted, maybe it was the first one they did, so then the coffee wasn't quite working yet, but they had one plan that they overwrote the previous year's rate. And so what MyTRS did, and we're going to talk about this on the next slide a little bit, but when they went in to go check their retiree insurance deduction history, they saw a huge bill for every single retiree on that plan. They started checking other people, and it was like $400. And that's because if you change the rates now on your 2024 plans, you're telling MyTRS, oh my God, we've been taking that rate all these months at the wrong price. You have to backdate it. MyTRS has that capability, so it would calculate out a bill for every single person in that situation, okay? So we're going to talk about how to fix that. That is real life. It happens. It happened this month. It happened in October. So it's something to be very careful about. So with this, we're going to bring our guy up again in the tie, and we want to talk about some common mistakes to avoid, right? So the first one, I know I just kind of like spilled the beans on this, but do not overwrite your current rates. Remember, I tried to emphasize this earlier in the presentation, every rate needs its own row. So just like retirees, they have their July 1st rate, and you add new plan. You don't delete the current one. You add a new one on top. Stop date for the old one kicks in automatically, and then you put in your new price, right? Same thing with the global plans. So it needs a new row. If you're overriding an old row, you did something wrong. Now, we've all had that day, even the best of us. You override an old row and you go, oh my God, I know he said it like 17 times in the training, but I still did it. So this is what you want to do. First, fix the old rate. Then wait a day. You want MyTRS to think about that rate all by itself. It'll go back in, redistribute the old rate, and then we're going to take the next step to fix it, okay? The next day, add a new rate row, just like you were going to in the beginning. And what MyTRS should do is it should, calculate. First, it'll calculate the amount wrong because you had the wrong, you accidentally updated your row. Then the next day, because you made the fix, it's going to go back in, it's going to recalculate them all. So if it billed them, it would refund them. If you refunded them, it'll bill them. And then when you're adding in the stuff on the next day, that next night, it'll do a new batch to distribute the new rates to everybody. Now, the fourth bullet that I really should have put here, and in hindsight, I forgot, so I apologize. Bullet number 4 here is to contact insurance updates. Let us know that it happened. We're not going to shame you. We're on your side. We want this to work well. So just give us a heads up. We'll go in and make sure MyTRS did everything it was supposed to. Or if not, we'll work with you to get right on it to get the stuff fixed proactively. The most important thing we can do is fix it before it becomes a real problem for retirees. That's our goal. That's our only goal, right? So please reach out if you find yourself, in this boat. If you forget what these steps are and you're just like, oh man, I overwrote. Now what? Don't do anything else. Contact us. We'll walk you through the fix. Okay. And then as you're going through this, I can't say enough, no manual stop dates and plan rates, right? So that's the thing. Stop with the stop dates, no manual stop dates when you go through this process. All right. Now, the other part of this to keep in mind is you're going to do your rate changes. You have to do it as one transaction. Now, we've had people go in and they're like, oh, I went to go update my rates and then I realized I had the wrong date. So I added a new row, but now it's a penny, but I don't know what the price is supposed to be. If you find yourself in that situation, do not leave it as a penny. Make it last year's rate, okay? Save it. The next day, go back in and fix your brand new July 1, 2025 row to be the proper price. And MyTRS in a second overnight process will go in and distribute that new price a second time. Okay, but make sure you do the full transaction in one step. I had a district last year and they went in and again, they were doing the wrong sort of procedure anyway, because they added all the stop dates. And then they were like, oh yeah, I thought I had the new plan. So I figured while I was in there, I'd just add all my stop dates. Then I had to explain to the poor souls that they had to add a new row in and a new plan for every single retiree in their town for every single option. They were working on this for weeks. So instead of it being sort of a 20-minute a thing that they do once a year, they created a ton of extra work for themselves. So please be careful of that. I would say, and I know I said this earlier, but process 1 to 2 plan changes at a time. You don't have the weight of having to have someone confirm they already did your rate changes for you. Please don't rush. Mistakes have consequences, both to retirees. Sometimes it's to you, because if you rush the process, you add stop dates or whatever the situation is, because you're in a hurry, and now you've got tons of extra work to do, right? Nobody wants that. We want this to be as simple for you and effective as possible. So when selecting plans, again, I know we said this earlier, but only select the plans you need. The more plans you pick for no reason, it's just going to clutter up your menus. You're going to get frustrated with it. Or you'll just end up with lingering penny rates, right? Now, if you've picked a plan and you're like, oh, I know he said this so many times, but I still did it by accident. No big deal. Leave them as a penny. When you're done adding all your changes and you feel comfortable, everybody's at the right rate, you can email us and just say, hey, by the way, can you get rid of these rows for me? If you want to take a little snippet of what rows they are, that would be super helpful, so we're not guessing. But yes, we can happily delete those for you. And it happens to everybody. We don't want it to be cluttered either. So if we can help in that regard, we will. And then last but not least, senior versus individual rates. So These are distinct options, right? So in theory, individual rates are for people on plans that are 65 or under, and senior are 65 plus plans, right? So when you're picking your plans, let's say it's MedX. MedX has an individual row and it has a senior row, right? Because you can offer MedX for 65 below, or you can offer it for just people who are 65 or older. So the system allows you to pick both, right? Or either or. So when you're picking your plans, just be careful that you're matching your plan and its option to what you use. So for instance, I love using MedX as an example just because so many people have it. TMP is another one that a ton of people have. So if you're using one of those and you have a senior option as your current rate, when you're going to update it, you just need to make sure you're picking Tufts or MedX and that you're picking that senior rate. That way MyTRS is matching them up and it says, oh, okay, we got a new plan price for this existing plan. We're going to grab everybody on that plan and everything will go well. Now, let's say you have senior and you accidentally pick individual, you add it in, you're done, and you go, oh, geez, I picked the wrong one, right? Look, I've done it. So it's not magically going to know that one is versus the other, right? So go in, add your proper senior plan as well, and then take a snippet of the individual one and send it to insurance updates and say, when I was adding, I added an individual by mistake. Seniors here, I added that. That one's now fine. Can you just delete the individual for me and we'll do that for you, okay? But if you're in your system and it's already existing that way, okay, and you have senior, because some districts have done this in the past, so they kind of have both options. They're both at the same price. We're going to work with you on a little bit different process to clean that up, okay? Because there could be people who have the wrong option on their individual level, and we don't want to wipe that out. So what we'll do is we'll walk you through a process where we will create a unique price on the individuals just so that we can see. We'll usually go like make it a penny off, that kind of thing. We'll let one cycle go through, and anybody who's a penny off, we know they have the wrong rates. If you only have a couple retirees, we can just check them manually. But this tends to happen in really big districts, and nobody wants to go through 500 retirees. So we'll make it a penny off. It's harmless. And that will tell us who you need to move over to the senior version, and then we'll just turn off the individual plan. Okay. So, and again, we'll walk you through it if you have that, but that tends to be a very successful plan of just making sure things go through pretty painlessly. So, and then I think, yep. And then, so again, with the senior versus individual, just make sure you're being very careful when you're picking, and you should always be in a good spot. Okay. Do we have any questions in the chat?
It just went blank. Do you have it?
Mildred's chat went blank on her. Sorry, guys.
There's one question. I have employees who were assigned to the correct plan, but it should have been a senior rate. I need to go in and make a lot of corrections. How can I do this in batch rather than one by one?
Okay, so I think it would be best for us to support you on this individually, like reach out to insurance updates and we can walk you through the very specific fix for you. But I guess my question would be, depending on if they have individual chosen on each retiree, you would have to move them to the senior plan one by one so that they have the right plan on the retiree level. We don't have a way of saying, hey, take this new plan and assign it to whatever number of designees. They would have to be moved over one by one that way. Now, if they have senior on it and the price itself is just wrong on the plan, then we can just change the price on the plan and it will update all the retirees. Now, if that amount is off by a substantial amount, we might want to look at that again. How many people are we talking about and how much of a price difference are we looking at? Because obviously we don't want to create hundreds of dollars of bills, that sort of thing. So, but I would say, why don't you reach out to us on the insurance updates box and we'll happily go through it individually with you just to make sure everything's going to turn out okay. And again, being proactive, we definitely want to make sure we're on top of it right from the get-go. We have any other questions? Awesome. Okay. So hopefully this has helped and we've helped, folks really think about some of the processes. We certainly just want this to be a successful process for everybody. Now, we want to just point out a couple things from a resource standpoint. So first, we have an updated processing manual. We technically did it last year. However, folks have, sometimes even if you're coming into a new position, you kind of got the I shouldn't say the old person, the person who formerly worked there's materials. So if you have a physical book and it doesn't say 2024 on the cover and you would like a 2024 book, please email. We have the paragraph at the bottom of this slide. Please email insurance updates at trb.state.ma.us, which is just the insurance updates box. When you're sending stuff to insurance updates, please, one, always send it there. Sending it to Mildred directly makes it actually slower for her to react than if you send it there, because she spends most of her time in that box. When you email this box, please do not copy Mildred. This causes confusion. She might think she already answered you when she's in her box, or she might delete it out of her box thinking it was in insurance updates. It also doubles the amount of things that Mildred has to look at. And so when you double the amount of things that Mildred has to do, she gets to each thing a little slower, right? Nobody wants that. So if you could please just send them to insurance updates. And then if Mildred ever escapes, maybe goes somewhere warm with tropical drinks, we can cover her while she's gone. She certainly earned it. And so, or if just everybody decides to email on the same Tuesday, she can ask for help, that sort of thing. Okay. So please always send it to insurance updates. But in the new manual, we just have updated examples. Hopefully we've done a better job explaining things and learning from mistakes in the past. Certainly we're not perfect either. And again, we have physical books. So if you want a physical book, we'll happily send you one. I think we sent out 4 or 5 because we put that message in the reminder email for this, and a bunch of people asked. So we got them all out. As far as we know, we don't have any pending requests for them. All right. Now, in addition to the written manual, the step-by-step instructions that way, sometimes seeing in motion just works a little bit better, right? So we have, I know I didn't do a live, example here. That's because we already have them up for you. So we have them up for you for each version of a transaction. So you can look up initial enrollments for when it becomes enrollment season, change and correct enrollments, cancel enrollments, viewing insurance deduction history if you want to see what rebills are supposed to look like. Videos for plan price changes are also available. Viewing them, adding plans, or adding plan rates, adding plans we have to do, but all of those individual things are up there. Those videos are shorter. They're about 10 minutes each. They're all on YouTube. The best part about YouTube is you can pause me, rewind me, fast forward me. Just pause and say, Jesus, this guy talks too much. So, whatever you'd like to do, you have those options, okay? And know that they're always up and available. And if you have suggestions for other videos, if you think there's other materials we could put up or make them clearer, please let us know. Also send that to insurance updates so that we can gather everything. But I can tell you that Mildred does an amazing job of taking notes. All of these training materials are based on real life experiences and conversations she has with employers. So we try to figure all that in and factor it in for future cases and examples. And your feedback is crucial because, we're the retirement system. So we see things from a certain light. It's most important that we can explain it and hopefully in a helpful way for you because you're doing the work. All right. So hopefully you found this helpful. We can't say enough. You're a big part of what we do. We're a partnership here. We work together to serve the same people. They're your former employees. They're our members. And, all we want is for this to go as well as possible. So, there are a ton of different things you do for us as an employer and we do for you and vice versa. So it really is something that we want to make sure we have a good relationship in taking care of. Okay. And then last but not least, we've all been there. Possibly look like the young lady in the bottom left-hand corner here. You're just going through everything and you're just like, all right, I don't know what to do about this case. Okay, so for insurance updates or for the insurance stuff, for general questions as an employer, we have employer support, which is empsup@trb.state.ma.us. For everything insurance related, please send it to that other box, which is insurance updates at trb.state.ma.us. It's in the materials. You'll see it online. We have it in a ton of different places. We had it in the review for this. The message inviting you to this program. But we want to help. So, and I can't say enough with retiree stuff. Again, it affects real retirees and near real time. So, we want to work with you. We want it to go as smooth as possible. That's why we block you out a couple days every month. We block everybody out of the system just to make sure we can try and scour the system, look for any large rebills. Every single month, we're calling somebody to make sure, if it's a large rebuild, does it look okay for their benefit? Was it a mistake? So, we try to be as proactive as we possibly can. And again, we just want this to work well for everybody. So hopefully this has helped. I'm not sure if we have any questions. I'm going to give it a minute or two just to give folks an opportunity to ask anything if you've been kind of holding your questions. If folks want to drop off now, please feel free. Thank you for joining us today. Very much appreciate it and appreciate your attention. And we look forward to helping you if you need any help. And again, I'm going to stay live for a minute or two just to see if any questions come in. I think we're good. Do we have anything coming in? Oh, awesome. All right.
Thank you.
And we appreciate the positive feedback. All right. So I don't want to hold people up for no reason. If sometimes the best question comes to you like 2 minutes after the program's over. So if you end up with other questions that you just didn't think of today, no problem at all. Send them over to Insurance Updates. We'll jump right on it. And, I hope everybody has a great week. The weather's getting nice. Find a reason to get outside for a couple minutes during lunch. And with that, have a great day, everybody.